Hello true crime fans. Today, we delve into the terrifying depths of human darkness as we explore 4 horrific murder cases that have left their mark on the pages of criminal history. From betrayal to the tragic fate of sisters Zahra and Hawraa, and the disturbing tale of an 8-year-old serial killer, by the mysterious Franklin Floyd. Let the journey begin. Treachery in its ugliest form. In a mall, a 22-year-old girl was sitting in the prime of her youth. Her name was Najla Niamatalla. She worked as an accountant to register patients in a clinic, and she had a friend who showed love and harbored evil and jealousy. Her name was Nuran. They were close friends, sharing all things and clothes, and arguing over food. So what was that? It happened. This crime occurred in the year 2021, August, in Egypt, in the Kafr el-Dawar area in Bahira, when Nuran was looking for work, so her friend Nagla, the victim, helped her by working with her in the clinic. Until here, everything is fine, so what is the problem? Greed and jealousy blinded Nuran's insight because she heard praise for Najla from everyone around her, which increased her hatred. One day she and 2 of her relatives, Muhammad and his friend Ahmed, agreed, and by agreement and planning, she came as usual to the clinic, and at night the crime happened. They wanted to leave, and the victim, Najla, did not notice anything. Suddenly, they strangled her, and then her friend Nuran stabbed her several times. When Najla realized what had happened, she said her last sentence before her death: "You are forbidden from having a day." Nuran stole the entire customs income and stole a gold ring and necklace that the murdered Najla was wearing and fled. The next day, when the police learned and were informed about the crime, and by referring to the surveillance cameras, they saw the crime in detail. Najla was engaged, and her fiancé said to Nuran, "Why did you do this? She considered you her sister. She shared her clothes with you. Why?" He was breaking down crying. As for the grieving mother, she was hoping that justice would be achieved and the killers would be arrested. Only several months had passed and Nuran and her partners in the crime were arrested, and when confronted with the evidence, they all confessed to the crime they had committed. When she confessed, Nuran said, "I agreed with my relatives Muhammad and his friend Ahmed to steal the clinic's revenue, so she put me on anesthetic. In juice, I gave it to Najla. When she felt dizzy, my relative and his friend strangled her, and when she was crying out to me for help, I stabbed her several times to make sure she was dead." Throughout the past months, the 2 killers were imprisoned pending investigation, and in the year 2022, divine justice was achieved to save the oppressed victim. The 2 killers were sentenced to the following. Nuran was sentenced to death by hanging. One of her accomplices who strangled Muhammad was also executed by hanging. As for the other, Ahmed, he was sentenced to 15 years because he was a minor. The case was closed and ululations of joy rose from Najla's mother to achieve justice for her daughter and take revenge on her killers, so that they might know that as you condemn, you will be judged, and your Lord gives respite and does not neglect. The case of the murder of the sisters Zahra and Hawraa. The family is a person's security and a refuge if life shocks you with its weariness and hardships. The family is what contains you in times of adversity, but if the dagger comes to you from the one who is your shield, this is what breaks the heart. I came today and I will tell you about a tragic crime that shook Baghdad, especially Sadr City, Sector 4. This crime occurred in the year 2021. Zahra and Hawraa are university students at Imam Sadiq University, peace be upon them, in the law department. They live in Baghdad, Sadr City, in a small family consisting of their father, mother, and their brother, Rafid. Well, how did the heinous crime happen? Their brother Rafid was constantly abusing them and did not allow them to go out except for university. He always threatened to kill them, but no one thought that he would fulfill his threat. Hawraa was the big sister after her brother, and she was preparing to get married in the 3rd month of the year 2021, and Hawraa was the youngest among them. But life did not give her time to be happy, as the flower of her youth was stolen while she was young. The events began on a day when the father and mother had gone out to the market and the 2 girls remained in the house with Rafid. Suddenly, he pushed the door of Zahra's room forcefully, smashed the dressing mirror, took a piece of broken glass, and made many wounds to his sister Zahra. Then he took out a gun and fired 6 bullets into her head and body until they died. Life immediately. As for Hawraa, when she saw what happened she wanted to escape and tried to jump to the roof of the house to call for help from the neighbors while she was screaming with all her might, but her brother caught up with her and shot her 4 bullets that killed her instantly. You will say, what is wrong with him? Is he crazy or mentally ill or what? No, gentlemen, not this or that. Rather, he was drunk and drinking alcohol, and he was drunk that day. After he completed the terrible crime he had committed against 2 flowers that were at the height of their flowering, he fled from the house, unaware of what he had done. After the parents returned home and saw the disastrous scene, they were shocked and called the police. The police learned from sources close to the family that the killer, Rafid, called his uncle during the burial ceremony in the Wadi al-Salam cemetery to ask him why the ambulance and people gathered at his door. He told him that you had committed a crime against your sister, so he quickly hung up the phone and fled. Look at his impudence and coldly ask why. After this crime, the father and mother entered a bad psychological state and were deeply saddened by the loss of their 2 daughters. The mother also put their house up for sale because in every corner she remembered her daughters. Here they Saturday. Here they ate. And here they were laughing. They were a beautiful family until alcohol and drugs came between them. The mother demanded retribution and the arrest of her son. As for the father, he went into isolation and did not speak to any of his relatives. When he was arrested, Rafid was not content with what his hands had committed, but he also poured poison on Hawraa and Zahra, saying, I killed them out of honor. With cold blood and a stony heart, he accused his 2 sisters of their chastity while they were in their graves, but the analyses proved that he was drunk and what he said against them was invalidated. He was sentenced to death, but as you know, gentlemen, the law has loopholes, which the clans wanted to exploit in order to end the case and make it a family settlement. Will Zahra and Hawraa's rights be lost? Will the heartbreak of her mother and father be in vain? What is your opinion? If it were up to me, I would have killed him in the same place they were killed, and make it an example for anyone who dares to commit this heinous act. Amarjit Sada, an 8-year-old serial killer, kills his victims in cold blood. There is no doubt, dear viewer, that you have often read about types and types of murderers and criminals, including those who cut bodies, smash heads, and terrorize innocent people, but this killer should be an 8-year-old child. Here I am sure you will be shocked and amazed. Let us dive together into the details of the story of this young serial killer who kills his victims in cold blood. Amarjit Sada, some pronounce him Amardeep, was born in 1998 in the Begusarai region of the state of Bihar in India. He belongs to a very poor family. His father is a simple worker who barely makes ends meet. In general, this state is considered one of the poorest regions of India and most of its residents live in extreme poverty, and because of this, harsh conditions forced Amarjit to work at a very young age. He was an ordinary child like his peers. The beginning of the killing chain. Amarjit began his crimes with the people closest to him, and his first victim was his 6-month-old cousin. One day, Amarjit went to visit his uncle's house, as was his custom. When the family was gathered and engaged in conversation, Amarjit sneaked into the next room, where the little boy was sleeping, may God protect him. He looked at him for a moment. Then he decided to strangle him to death and left the place as if nothing had happened. As for the second victim, she was an 8-month-old girl, and believe it or not, this child was his little sister. While the child was sleeping, he carried her and took her to a nearby field and beat her to death. He returned home calmly, and when his parents asked him where she was, he took them to where her body was. What is surprising is that Amarjit's parents and relatives were aware of his crimes, but they hid the matter for fear of punishment, and considering that the matter was a family matter, since the victims were from within the family. His mother denied that he had killed his sister and said that she had accidentally fallen from him while he was carrying her, as well as the people of the area. Their suspicions revolved around the young boy, but they remained silent until the day came when he killed his third victim, which led to the discovery of his matter. One day, a village woman named Chun Chun Devi placed her 6-month-old little girl, Khushbu, in the school nursery and went to do some housework. Meanwhile, Amarjit was wandering the streets until he reached the school and decided to enter. The staff did not care about his presence, given that he was just an 8-year-old child. He started wandering around the school until his eyes fell on little Khushbu, who was sleeping peacefully. The devilish idea flashed into his head and he decided to take her to one of the nearby fields. He carried her in his arms and snuck out of the school and took her to a place nearby outside the village. He put her on the ground and started beating her with a brick until she couldn't breathe. Then he covered her body with some leaves and herbs and returned to his house. When Khushbu's mother returned in the evening to take her, she was surprised that the child had disappeared from her place. The poor mother went crazy and started screaming until the villagers gathered and began searching with the child's relatives. The shock was that they found her in one of the nearby fields, drowned in a pool of blood and covered with some tree branches. They carried the body and headed off to the police station, and investigations began, and while the police were touring the town, the people told them about their suspicions about Amarjit and told them how he killed his sister and cousin. At first, the police doubted their words, as he was just a small child, so how could he kill this number of children? But the police soon opened investigations and began interrogating Amarjit and his family, revealing the horrific facts. During the investigation, Amarjit was extremely calm and indifferent, and he was even smiling coldly. Not only that, but when the officer asked him about the little girl, he asked him to bring him some biscuits first. Indeed, when he received the box of biscuits, he began narrating the details of his horrific crime in cold blood and without batting an eyelid. He gave them a detailed explanation, and also confessed to killing his sister and cousin. Shatrughan Kumar, one of the investigators in the case, said that throughout his long career, he had never encountered a person with such confidence and fearlessness, nor did his features show any hint of sadness, feelings of remorse, or at least fear of the police. During the investigations, Amarjit's parents tried to justify his actions under the pretext that he did not know right from wrong, but their attempts failed, and the police insisted that he was guilty and knew very well what he was doing. Speaking with Amarjit's friends, they said that he loved to see others in pain, and they also said that he used to beat us a lot in the game of soldier and thieves, and we did not like to play with him, but we did so out of fear of him. Psychology opinion. Amarjit's condition was diagnosed by a number of psychiatrists and they concluded that he has a case of psychopathy. He also suffers from a brain defect that has led to a chemical imbalance that makes him feel pleasure and enjoyment when he harms others and sees them in pain. His condition was officially diagnosed as a disorder. In behavior. The trial. He was tried in a juvenile prison, and according to Indian laws, a child of this age cannot be sentenced to more than 3 years, which he spent in a correctional institution. Because of his mental condition, he was placed in a mental institution after serving his sentence, and it is said that he was released after he turned 18. His age. Some sources say that he changed his name to hide his identity and is now living his life under an identity and pseudonym, and who knows, perhaps he will commit more murders. Franklin Floyd, devil or madman? Franklin Delano Floyd grew up in a broken family in one of the American states. His father died when he was 5 years old, so he, his mother, and his sisters moved to his grandparents' house, who quickly became fed up with their situation, so they expelled their daughter and her children. Franklin was then scattered between care homes and shelters after his mother left him there, and he was subjected to beatings, harassment, and physical and psychological abuse. When he reached the age of 16, Franklin began stealing. The thefts were small at first and unnoticed. Then he was arrested for attempting to steal a firearm and was placed in a correctional facility for a year. This was in 1960. 2 years later, in 1962, Franklin was arrested after he kidnapped a 4-year-old girl and molested her. He was sentenced to 10 years. While he was being transferred to a psychiatric hospital to check his mental abilities, Franklin escaped. During his escape, he robbed a bank and was arrested. It is noteworthy that Franklin was easily arrested at the beginning of his life of crime. He was placed in a prison in the state of Pennsylvania, where he was raped by the prisoners, and he could not get rid of them except by threatening suicide after climbing one of the fences. Franklin was transferred to the Illinois State Prison, where he formed a friendship with a man named David throughout his sentence. In 1972, Franklin was released. A week later, he committed a crime of kidnapping and assaulting a woman while she was riding in her car, but she was able to escape and inform the police. The police easily arrested Franklin, but Franklin implicated David, a prison friend, and he was able to escape. In 1974, Franklin met, under an assumed name, Mrs. Sandy Chipman, a single mother of 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. He filled her mind with sweet words and quickly married her within a month and convinced her to move with him to Dallas. There, Sandy was imprisoned for a month in the case of a check she could not honor, and she left her children in Franklin's custody. Sandy was released from prison at the end of the month and was shocked to not find her family. The landlord told her that he was evicting them for not paying rent. Sandy found the 2 little girls in a church care home and was unable to find her older daughter, Susan, or her little child, Philip. Where did Susan and Philip go? Philip, at first everyone thought he had died, but in 2010 someone came forward claiming that he was Philip, and a DNA analysis confirmed the validity of his claim and that he had been secretly adopted by a family. Poor Susan remained, who was kidnapped by Franklin, claiming that she was his daughter, and he moved her to another state and enrolled her in a school under an assumed name. In 1988, he married her, who was 17 years old, and had their only child, Michael. The strange thing is that Franklin joined a job similar to confidential informants in the police force, despite his past, and he threatened Susan that if she thought of running away, he would always be able to find her and kill her. Susan, who was living under the name Tanya Hugh, finally escaped in 1990 with her 2-year-old son, Michael. 3 months later, Franklin found Susan and severely beat her, then hit her with a car and fled. She was taken to a hospital, where she died from her wounds, leaving behind Michael, who Franklin returned looking for, but the police did not hand him over, and Michael was placed in a nursing home to be adopted by a loving family. But Franklin did not calm down, so he stormed Michael's school in 1994 at gunpoint, took Michael, and fled with him. The police's diligent efforts were able to find Franklin 2 months later, but Michael was not there. Franklin refused to provide any information. There are witnesses who said that Franklin killed Michael and buried him in a forest. There are those who said that he gave him to a family. Franklin's sister said that Frank told her that he drowned Michael in a bathroom on the road. In an interview with Michael in 2015, he said that he shot him. As we conclude our journey through the darkest corridors of human nature, we find ourselves haunted by the echoes of these 4 chilling murder cases. The threads of betrayal, the heartbreaking tale of sisters Zahra and Hawraa, the disturbing reality of an 8-year-old serial killer, and the enigma surrounding Franklin Floyd, they all leave us questioning the depths of the human soul. As we reflect on these stories, let us not only remember the victims but also consider the lessons embedded in these tragedies. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of empathy and vigilance in our society. Thank you for joining me on this unsettling yet enlightening exploration. If these stories have left you with a mix of emotions, you're not alone. Let us strive to create a world where such darkness finds no room to thrive. Stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and may the memories of those we've discussed today serve as a catalyst for change. If you found this journey into the realm of true crime intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, signing off from Murder Chronicles. Remember, in the face of darkness, it's our shared humanity that can bring about the light. Take care.